Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirits book. We last week started the role of spirits in natural phenomena. We actually studied the first question and discussed it, but we asked Philip to read the first one and the second one, so we can go back. It's question 536. Yes. So we will have an opportunity to discuss it again, okay?
The role of spirits in natural phenomena, 536. Are natural phenomena, which we consider a disruption of the elements, due to chance, or is there a purpose behind them? There is a reason for everything. Nothing takes place without God's permission. Do these phenomena always have a reference to humankind? Sometimes they have a direct reference to humans, but they often have no other purpose than to reestablish the balance and harmony of the physical forces of nature. We acknowledge that God's will must be the primary cause of these phenomena, but since we know that spirits can in fact act upon matter and that they are agents of God's will, we would ask whether some among them could not exert and influence the elements in order to rouse, calm, or direct them. But that is obvious. It could not be otherwise. God does not exercise direct action upon matter. God has faithful agents in every degree of worlds. 537. The mythology of ancient civilizations is entirely based on spiritist ideals, with the difference that they viewed spirits as deities. They represented those gods with special attributes. Some controlled the wind, others lightning, while others ruled over plants and vegetation, and so on. Is this belief groundless? It is so groundless that it is far from having any semblance of truth. By the same reason, could spirits somehow inhabit the core of the earth and rule over the development of geological phenomena? Those spirits definitely do not live within the earth, but they direct its developments according to their various terms. One day you will receive an explanation of all these phenomena, and you will then understand them better.
Okay. So we're talking about the role of spirits in natural phenomena. And we discussed the first question actually at length last week, so I'm not going to go into that discussion again. We just as a reminder that we have God and we have spirits that act under the natural laws of God's laws on the natural phenomena. Some spirits knowing and other spirits not knowing what they're doing. They're just instruments of the divine will. And I gave the example last week of the bees, right? The bees produce honey, they work, they are instruments of the development of their own progress, and they help humankind providing honey. Do they know that they are working? It's just instinct, right? So I went to the very basic example for us to understand that spirits that are in charge of the natural phenomena will act without being fully aware of what they are doing, act under the direction of more evolved spirits. And again, you know, I know Paco likes to bring it to the examples of us living. We are all working for the progress of humankind. Are all of us completely aware of our role in the development of humankind? No, we're doing according to our own limitations and our own knowledge. So it's the same thing. The different classes of spirits will be in charge of doing things. And the more material the things are, the more spirits connected more closely to matter will act on it. So the natural phenomena that occur that have spirits connected to it somehow will be spirits more material, more connected to matter, without really fully knowing what they are doing. They are just being instruments of more evolved spirits on the actions and the developments of these things. Now, the second question goes into the, the old mythology, right? That in the past we didn't know, we believed in multiple gods. There was a god of rain, the god of thunder, the sun god that the Egyptians believed, right? So they believed that there were gods that controlled each of the elements. And the Spirit tells us here that this is not the right way to explain. They say it's so groundless that it's far from having any semblance of truth. Meaning there is not one spirit in charge or one god in charge of wind. If we want to, it's just gods that they used to call God, what we call spirits nowadays, right? But there are spirits in charge of everything, right? So connected to, let's say, to Jesus, the governor of the planet. Under Jesus, you start having the pyramid of spirits working in direct connection to the spirits above them until you reach the level of spirits doing the basic work without really fully understanding or knowing what they are doing, right? So in that sense, continuing the second part, that you have spirits, they do not live within the earth, and that's important also, right? That there are spirits responsible for the core of the earth, the burning core of the earth. There are spirits responsible for it, but there are no spirits living there, right? The spirits live in the spiritual world. So they will be on earth, connected to earth, fulfilling the will of the creator, again, through this different levels of spirits, but not materially or physically living inside earth or any place like that. The same way that the spirits are around us here, but you don't say that the spirits that are here in New York live in New York. They are here. They can be here now and they can be connected to us, but the physical location is for us incarnates. For discarnates, there is no physical location. There is the vibrational connection and the association with same interests and same ideas, but not.
They have no fixed address.
They have no. Well, in terms of the physical world, they have fixed addresses in the spiritual world, right? André Luiz lived in Ossolar, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it is an address. Yeah, and.
Like they don't have like on Earth, like they don't have a physical address here. That's what I'm saying.
And yes and no, actually, because
really? It's not like a
well,
physical
because
address?
it's not a physical address.
No, I didn't say physical. I said like fixed.
I was thinking. Remember the movie The Others? Yes.
Yes.
They were living in that house, spirits, right? It was not a physical address but they didn't know that. So for
I didn't
them,
say physical. I said fixed.
yes.
Like fixed address. It is fixed.
Yeah. No, I understood. But and again, they may have it because of the connections they have to the incarnates or with the places. Yeah. You have to talk louder so people can hear you.
Just to illustrate what you said about the attachment that some spirits has to the matter. I used to go to a spirit center in São Paulo City, and in a mediumistic section, right? They were able to rescue all the spirits that Titanic boat
Mhm.
ship. And right after they rescued all of them, because they were so attached to that scenario, they were actually leaving the life they had in the boat. And like, even though the event was decades before. So they were attached and they were finally open to receive the help. They were rescued. And right after they were rescued, the scientists were able to find the boat, the ship.
Mhm.
And so do you remember the case of the plane that disappeared, the big plane that disappeared in Malaysia?
Yeah.
Nobody
A couple of years ago, like 3 years
Yeah.
ago, yeah.
Nobody knows. So there is a reason that they disappeared and they are there. So
Can you guys hear or more or less? Online?
Sometime,
Sorry?
the last few minutes has been better.
Yeah, okay. Fabio, can you talk a little bit about the Shinto religion here, with what you wrote? Okay, Fabio wrote, Shinto is another religion that highly resembles this idea. I believe this idea of the connections of the spirits in charge. Oh, okay. So he cannot speak because he's busy now. But anyway.
So in the case of the movies, that family was
Yeah.
so attached to that place, they didn't need to be there because they are spirit.
They could leave the place, but they are so, yeah.
So attached to that memory, to the life they had in that home, that they were not able
To leave.
to go to another
Yeah.
place.
Can this like happen like to a lengthy like time, like period of time, like can like in Earth like time, like it can last like 100 years, like 200 years. You can establish that the knowledge of like it's like
Yeah,
the
well,
spirit, like be attached, but not attached to the physical.
it can, but it will be a really an exception, right? Because the spirits can be so attached to a place or to things that it can stay there for a very long time without listening to the appeals to change. But that will be the exception. That will be very rare because
But
normally.
when they like a long length of time, that would be like, I'm thinking about like Earth, like
Yeah.
10 years, 100 years, like a year, what's
It could, again, time in the spiritual world is different than time in the physical world. So the perception is different. So yes, they can be there for a very long time, but it's, you know, it's not we cannot say how long. Carol.
Yes, apparently there are still soldiers from the Civil War that exist in Gettysburg. There are many people that try to help them, but many do not believe that they are dead.
Yeah.
So they're still there.
Yeah.
Someday they'll
Yes.
There were millions in my location, Sharon, that was with the ability to see the spiritual world. And one of the scenario, one of the place that our spirit center were located was, there were battles in the Civil War. And she said, oh, there are still people that are still fighting each other. They believe they still, you know, so they are attached to the Civil War that was decades ago.
100 years ago. 150 years. 150 years ago.
century and a half.
Yeah.
They're so attached to that scenario, they still be there.
Okay, you have to speak loud so people in the online can hear you guys. Okay. All right. Thanks. Next, Philip.
We didn't do 38, did we?
We didn't do 38. Oh no, we didn't. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Do the spirits who rule over natural phenomena form a special category in the spirit world? Are they separate beings or spirits who have incarnated before like us? They are spirits who will incarnate or who already have. Do those spirits belong to the higher or lower degrees of the spirit hierarchy? This depends on their material and intellectual standings. Some give orders while others execute. Those who satisfy material functions are always of lower order, whether spirits or incarnates.
Okay, so this is something that we discussed a little bit, right? There are no separate beings in nature. We are all created equal, simple, and ignorant. We evolve until we reach perfection. There are no beings created apart. So it's all the same. They're all spirits are the same. So the spirits in charge of these natural phenomena are spirits just like us, in charge because of they are involved in that area, right? So if they are less evolved spirits, they are spirits that will reincarnate. We stop reincarnation when we become perfect spirits. So these spirits already have incarnated and will incarnate again, reincarnate until they reach perfection. Not necessarily on Earth, depending on their level of evolution. If they, if they are at the level of evolution of Earth, they will incarnate here. If they are below, they will go to a more primitive planet. If they are above, they'll go to a more elevated planet, a higher planet. But what we know that there are no different beings in the creation, no special beings created by God. We are all created the same, and that's the natural law and the justice of God. Otherwise, God wouldn't be just if some beings were created different than others, right? So they belong to all orders of spirits, depend on their role and depends on what they're doing, right? Like here we have different incarnated spirits that with different levels of knowledge, intellectual and moral evolvement. We'll have spirits that are doing this type of work in different degrees of the spirit hierarchy, okay? All right.
539. Does a single spirit partake in the production of natural phenomena such as a storm, or is it a mass of spirits who are responsible? In innumerable masses.
That's a direct answer from the spirit. So, and it goes against that question of one spirit in charge of the wind or the sun, or so there are innumerable masses of spirits working in all the natural phenomena, and that's very important concept, right? We don't go any further on how long they're there, what qualifies to be there. This is not discussions that that Kardec had, and according to our natural evolvement, we need to learn things, right? The intellectual evolvement encompasses us understanding more and more things about ourselves, the world, and the universe, right? So these spirits, while they are working there, they are serving a purpose for themselves and for others until it reaches a point that they no longer need to be there. Other spirits replace them. And again, if we think that there are 30 billion spirits on Earth, right, between incarnates and discarnates, there are enough spirits to do everything needed. And also some other spirits can be brought from other places in the spiritual world according to the necessities, like we are having spirits incarnating here on Earth that will help us move forward in our evolvement, like Divaldo Franco has described in his most recent books, on the way to the world of regeneration, planetary transition, spiritual disturbances. All this latest collection from Manuel Filomeno de Miranda describes the group of spirits that are coming to help us, humanity, to move into a world of regeneration that we are in the process. And that is accompanied, of course, by the last opportunity for many of the spirits to incarnate on Earth in terms of being at the same level of Earth, spiritual, vibrational level. And if they don't take this opportunity, they will go to worlds, less evolved worlds, where they will have an opportunity to be the intellectual leaders of those worlds, like we had here at the time of Capella, the Egyptians. You know, how come a civilization like the Egyptian appeared out of nowhere, right? It's spirits coming from more evolved civilizations with a more intellectual knowledge, but not moral advancement for that planet. So they come here to acquire, through suffering, struggling, and learning, the moral evolution that they need, and then eventually either going back there like the Egyptians went, or staying here. The other big the group that came, that went into India, into Europe, and into where is Iran today, or Iraq and Iran. Most of those spirits are still here. We are still them. Emmanuel says on the way to the light that the Egyptians, they all went back to Capella. Yeah. So, okay. Right?
40. Do the spirits who exert power over natural phenomena act intelligently and with conscious intent, or from an instinctive and irrational impulse? Some act in one way and others in another. Let us make a comparison. Think of the host of animals that gradually formed islands and archipelagos in the ocean. Do you think that the transformation of the Earth's surface has no divine purpose and is not necessary to general harmony? All this is accomplished by animals of the lowest degree that are simply providing for their physical needs without being aware that they are God's instruments. In the same way, spirits of the most rudimentary degrees are useful to the general whole. While preparing for life, and before having full awareness of their acts and of their free will, they act upon certain phenomena in which they are the unwitting agents. They begin by executing the orders of their superiors, and when their intelligence is more developed, they direct the processes of the material world. Further along, they are able to direct the efforts of the moral world. This is how everything is useful. Everything in nature is linked together, from the original atom to the archangel, who began as an atom. This is an admirable law of harmony that your mind is still too narrow to fully comprehend.
Okay. I think it ends here. So here the spirits gives us a complete notion of the evolution, that we go as a spiritual principle, right, from the atom to the archangel, until we become perfect spirits, which is the archangel, right? And throughout our evolution, we are co-creators of the universe. In the possible role that we can execute at the moment. Again, go back to the bees, right? Aren't they creating something for the universe? They are, right? The ants, they have their purpose. I'm not going to talk about cockroaches because I know that everybody's going to ask what's their purpose, right? But they have purpose. Everything have purpose, right? Rats, yeah. So we go throughout our evolution. We are created. We are not created spirits. We are created spiritual principle, right? We go from a single atom and we start evolving until going through the mineral phase, the vegetable phase, the animal phase, until we become an individual spirit. And then we start developing, simple and ignorant, and then we continue evolving our moral and intellectual evolution until we reach perfection. Takes billions and billions of years, of course. The spirits told us that we are closer to perfection than we are from our beginning at this stage. So we already came a long way. But as the Spirit says here, all spirits execute orders of their superiors knowingly or unknowingly. And when they become develop the intelligence, they direct the processes of the material world, and then they direct the effects of the moral world. You see the evolution, the intellectual first, the moral follows, because the moral is more difficult, right? The intellectual is you only have to add. The moral, you have to subtract the imperfections. So it's always harder. But it is the natural process. We work directly in connection with God through many intermediaries, which are spirits, right? But that's the law of nature, as they say here, the admirable law of harmony that our minds are still too narrow to fully comprehend. We know more than when the spirits gave this answer 150 years ago, 60 years ago, but we still know very little. We still have a long way to go. So that's a beautiful answer from the spirits. One of the answers that is used, Divaldo jokes that this is where you find quantum physics at the time of Kardec, is this answer from the atom to the archangel.
This idea of the evolution,
Genesis.
mosaic Genesis,
In the Mosaic Genesis.
very first verse, they compare the phase we go from middle to the human comparison to the sequence that all
The 7 days of the creation in the original Genesis. Yeah, that's true.
It's first God made the water, then the vegetable, then the human, and gave the human the right to dominate the lower.
Yeah, you see that the truth was always there, right? It's our interpretation of the truth that complicates things many times, right? But
It's in the very first chapter of Mosaic.
okay. So
João, can you rephrase? I couldn't hear anything. Can you rephrase the question or the comment?
yeah, he was talking about how everything is. You can find everything in the original Genesis, in the Old Testament, right? The creation of the universe as God describes. The first day, first create the water, then create the vegetables, the mineral, the vegetables, the animals. It is the evolutionary path of the spirit, right? Since the beginning, from being a spiritual principle until you become a spirit, and the evolution of the spirit. That's the comparison he made, looking at the Old Testament, the Genesis of the Old Testament. Okay. All right, so we finished the natural phenomena. Now we are going into a very difficult subject that we are facing nowadays also, right? Spirits during wars. So let's try to understand better what's their role in wars. Go ahead, Philip.
541. Are there spirits who help and support each side fighting in a battle? Yes, and who inspire their courage as well. Ancient populations represented the gods as taking sides for a group of people. those gods were nothing more than spirits represented by allegorical figures.
If you understand the notion that spirits are involved in every aspect of our lives, of course they'll be involved in wars, right? So the spirits are who are the soldiers who are defending their country. If they die and nothing changes, they will continue defending their country from the spiritual side. Spirits that there will be spirits on both sides. Of course, at a certain level of evolution, spirits that understand the eternal nature of ourselves and the lack of sense that wars have, they will move on and leave it behind. But for that, you have to have a bigger, better understanding of us as eternal spirits, right? When you are too close to matter, and most of us are, it's only natural that you go to the other side and you keep the same thoughts and the same inclination. So let's say, talking about the Ukrainians, right? The Ukraine was just invaded by Russia. Not only the soldiers are fighting, but the spirits that discarnated in Ukraine in the past 20, 30, 50 years, that are still too attached to the country and do not have this understand of us as eternal spirits, they may be there inspiring, helping, protecting their family members, their loved ones, their country, because it still means for them what it meant when they were incarnated, right? So by that, you can understand how you can have spirits on both sides of war. Of course, God does not have any side in a war, right? Because it doesn't make any sense. God doesn't take sides. The protecting spirits that understand us, our spiritual nature, they will try to help and inspire those that are responsible to try to avoid the destruction, to try to avoid the bad things that happen in wars, but also understanding that we are all eternal spirits. So eventually we'll go back to the spiritual world and this will be behind us, right? If you remember when what the chapter we just studied in Liberation, the beautiful prayer for the persecutors, right? That gives you an idea of how superior spirits will see this type of events that are happening, especially wars. But this is more evolved spirits. Spirits that are at our level of evolution, they will be involved in the same way that the incarnate ones are, trying to inspire them, to protect them if possible, to guide them. So the representation of the gods that Kardec mentions here, gods were nothing more than spirits represented by allegorical figures, right? You know, that of course, in the old times, mediums existed. Mediums would see spirits in the battlefield. So they would say that the spirits are, the gods are here protecting us, which are no more than spirits that were there taking part in the battle, right? So that's how the gods came to be. Mediums who still mediums today that do not understand the concept of the spiritual world, think that they are seeing angels, right? That they are seeing God. Sometimes they'll say that they are seeing God. So it's the same thing, right? So these are the spirits that will be involved in the wars according to their materiality, how much they are still attached to the material world. Okay?
Johnny,
Yes.
what is your view regarding cause and effect to those who participate in wars, both incarnate and discarnate?
That's a very good question, Luis. Of course, the more you know, the more responsible you are, right? So if you are part of, you are fighting in a war because you are forced to be in a war because you were invaded, your country was invaded, and you know, if you feel the obligation to defend your country and defend your life and your family, the consequences of what you have done will be different from the consequences of those that are in the same war and are causing intentional harm to innocent people, right? So it has to have a degree of cause and consequence levels for those that are involved according to their actions, according to their motives, and according to the necessity. It's difficult to you know, we know that war is not a good thing, that destruction is always against the natural law, intentional destruction, right? Because we have the law of destruction. But within this this war and this destruction, there has to be different levels of responsibility of the spirits involved, right? You are there, you live in a country, you are called to war, it's not an option. Let's say you are forced to go into war, and you are there trying to defend your life, try to follow the orders of your generals, of your commanders. You're not responsible for the killings if you didn't cause any killing, you know, intentional and with bad intentions, right? Because it's just part of following the rules and following the laws. Of course, again, we all are responsible. The more we know, the more responsible we are. If we go to war, we know better nowadays. And that's why even the wars in modern times are, you know, they try to avoid killing innocent people, right? Civilians, yeah, it happens, it still happens, and it's still target. So we know that the theory is not the same as what really happens there. But in theory, we as human being, humanity, we are trying to avoid killing civilians in wars, in theory. In practical terms, it's a different story. But you see, at the time of the Second World War, which is 70 years ago, we were killing civilians without any respect for it. You were attacking, bombing cities left and right?
A maternity hospital.
And everything. So nowadays, at least we reached a level of understanding that that's not the right thing to do. Doesn't mean that we are able to do it still, because we're still struggling with the understanding. But we're evolving. We'll get to a point. Eventually, you get a point that war does not exist, right? That is the future of the planet. But until we get there, the wars will get less and less destructive in a sense, right? And as we evolve as humanity and as we try to avoid the destruction. So
I have a problem with this issue.
talk loud so people can hear you.
I have some kind of difficulties with this issue of war. Because there's a lot here, so there's a reason for everything. Nothing takes place without God's permission. So there must be a silver lining in the phenomenon of war. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, what God.
There's a silver lining there that is, even though I'm looking at it micro, not for the person, not macro, but I guess what's the silver lining from the macro perspective of war, which has to be so. Like teaching us.
It's not God's creation, right? It's result of our free will,
Yeah,
right?
Doesn't take place without God's permission.
Yes, but what's God's permission? Our free will. That's God's permission. And using our free will, we cause wars, but that's not God's will.
No.
That's our own free will and our misuse of our free will. And that it goes back to the very beginning with us primitives, right? We are in our cave trying to get food for us ourselves, and the neighbor caveman fighting for the food, we kill the neighbor, right? So it's out of necessity, cause and consequence very little, but of all those that killed the neighbor, some of them liked what they were doing, right? Like the experience of killing so they start killing out of killing, not out of necessity. And that's how you start deviating from the natural law and using your free will for the wrong approach, right? And from there you go up to here, where we have rulers using their free will to invade other countries, right? To cause war. And it's not only Russia and Ukraine. We have other wars in Yemen and in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Myanmar. So there are. Sorry. Well, that's not a war, but killings. Yes. So what is important is God did not create war. We created war using our free will. God gave us free will, and with the free will, the responsibility for our actions and consequences for our actions. So using this free will, we are going to face the consequence. And that goes to Luis' question, right? The consequences are according to our knowledge of what we are doing, right? The first caveman that killed the other caveman, there's no consequence there. They don't know better. They don't know anything, right? So because
it's the fact of being aware.
It's your conscience.
Yeah.
It goes all the way.
Aware, like you're doing evil or something. So you kind of is excuse, but it's not excuse.
It's not excused. It's just that it's mitigates. Yes, it's the more you know, the more responsible you are. So there is no consequence. Again, our evolutionary path, as I always say, when you make a mistake because you didn't know anything, there's no consequence. When you repeat that mistake, knowing what you are doing, then you start creating the karma. Yeah, you create the karma when you are repeating the mistakes, when you don't learn from your mistakes. Because the evolution is trials and errors. You make a mistake, you learn from it, you evolve, you don't do it again. No consequence. You make a mistake, you learn from it, you repeat it. You created a karma.
Paul said to the Corinthians, when there is no law, there is no sin. So when you know the law and you act as an innocent, you're innocent from the action. But once you know, you have the responsibility to do the right thing.
Yeah, Julio, remember Julio talking about you being isolated in an island. What's your ethical and moral obligations when you are by yourself in an island? It's according to your degree of moral and intellectual involvement, right? And it's for you to reflect on that case that Julio used to bring. Okay. Questions here? No. Anyone? Okay.
542.
Yeah.
There can only be one right side in any war. How can spirits support the wrong side? You know very well that there are spirits who seek conflict and destruction. For them, war is war. They do not care whether it is fair or not.
Again, that's an interesting concept, right? Because normally one side starts a war, right? There's never a fight when the two do not want to fight. But when you start to defending yourself, you enter into a fight, right? So in that sense is where Kardec is saying that can only be one right side in any war. But the right side can change during a war. That's what Kardec doesn't, because if a country is invaded and then starts defending itself, and then starts winning the war and then becomes
Approaching the other.
and then becomes cruel and dominating the other one, so the right side changes. So we have to be very careful with this, the right side, right? So let's say Russia invaded Ukraine, right? It's not going to happen because Ukraine is not strong enough to fight again, invade Russia. But let's say Ukraine starts invading Russia and starts, killing Russians and theory. Then who's the right side now? The women and children killed in Russia, or so we have to be very careful with this. But the answer from the spirits here, the important thing is there are spirits on both sides always, independent on who is right. Because you can imagine that the Russians that think that what they are doing is right, because there are many Russians that believe that they are right. It's their right to own Ukraine because it was part of the big empire that they used to have, I don't know how many centuries or years ago. So these Russians, when they go back to the spiritual world, they continue fighting in the side of the invaders, right? So in that sense, that when they say that there are spirits that will be on both sides, and also there are those that like to fight. You know, this war,
Just for the sake of fighting.
yes, this war have on both sides, they have those, how do you call those hired?
Mercenaries.
Mercenaries. There are mercenaries on both sides of the war, right? Because they like to be part of a war. It's in their nature, right? So these are spirits that when they go back to the spiritual world, what changes? Nothing. They continue to be involved in wars. And if they can continue to provoke wars so they can continue to be part of wars, they will. So that's what the spirits are telling us here, right? Again, it's us. We spirits on the other side, it's just us without the physical body. We don't change. Everything that we like or dislike here, we like or dislike there tomorrow in the spiritual world. Can we change in the spiritual world? Yes, and we will. But it doesn't happen overnight. Yeah, we keep being exactly who we are until we get there and we start making sense of things. But for some spirits, that can take hundreds of years. Yes.
Johnny,
It's the exception, but it can. Yes, Luis.
in your opinion, is it correct to say that those that like killing or have an affinity for killing other men, other humans, are part of the target population to go to more primitive worlds in this regeneration movement?
Yes, what we learned from the spirit, especially Manuel Filomeno de Miranda and Divaldo, the spirits that no longer can stay here on earth as we become a world of regenerations are spirits that do evil for the pleasure of doing evil. They don't want to change. Spirits that are just doing evil as followers, right? So you follow a leader, but it's not really your desire to do evil. It's just because you believe the wrong ideas. Those still have opportunities here. But the spirits that are already being transferred to more primitive worlds are spirits that are doing evil for the simple pleasure of doing evil. These are the spirits that are living. And again, it's not the majority, it's a minority, and they go in groups. They don't go, they are transported to more or less evolved worlds from a region in the lower zones, as the whole region is taken to a primitive world altogether as a group. It's not individual. Our evolutionary path up is individual. You go to a more evolved world by yourself because you evolved enough. You go to a less evolved world because you couldn't stay longer here in groups. That's an interesting concept that I learned also from studying Manuel Filomena de Miranda.
Say that you go back to, you're in the console.
Yeah,
And that console is rolling. Rolling is, but then it cannot be out of that. It's also not the.
you have to talk louder, they won't hear you.
It don't say that one belongs to a group.
Yeah, it's a group of spirits, less evolved spirits, and they are in the places in the lower zones, like the one we were studying in the Liberation, that Gregorio region, right? They are a group of spirits there. Those spirits that are focused on doing evil and have no intention of changing it, they are taken as a group to a less evolved, to a more primitive world, okay? So that's the group part, because they all kept in one region and they have no more condition to reincarnate on Earth. So they are taken as a group to a more primitive world. On the path of evolution, that's individual because it's your own, right? You are not taken in group. You evolve to a more evolved planet by yourself. If you evolve morally and intellectually enough, that you also, Earth is you have nothing else to learn here. Of course, we have our loved ones, we may want to stay. We know of spirits that decided to stay and not go into more evolved planet, but you go individually on the up, okay? That's the difference of the concept, okay? Okay, Luis? Okay, Danny?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't see your. Go ahead.
So this process happens all the time,
Yes.
like spirits being brought to, it's not just once Earth will, Earth reached to a point in which these people are not coming anymore, or this happens like it's a normal process.
You hear the question? Yeah, she's asking if this happens all the time. This exchange from spirits being taken back to a less evolved world, and happens all the time. But when happen in larger numbers, when we are changing from a primitive world to a world of trials and expiations, and this. When we are moving from a world of trials and expiations to a world of regeneration, which is a process that can take couple of hundred of years or even more. But this is a process that then accelerates the removal of these spirits that can no longer stay here. And again, what is important is they are not being expelled from Earth. Their own vibrational level does not allow them to incarnate on Earth anymore because they don't connect the vibrational level. Earth's vibrational level does not support them staying here. It's always the example that the simple example that I like to give between the church and the bar in a street. You choose to go to a church, you choose to go to a bar. It's your choice. It's their choice of no longer being able to stay here, right? It's a punishment. No, it's the natural law. It's God's law. They know their vibrational level takes them to a less evolved place where they will struggle, they'll suffer, because you can imagine living here, the comfort of this planet, if you like it or not. But you can imagine, yeah. Air conditioning, really, right? Yes. Yeah, Carol said we are at pivotal time in terms of, these spirits, that's why we are seeing a lot of what we are seeing, the problems we have, because these spirits are having their last opportunity. There are spirits that no longer have an opportunity. They're already being transferred. But there are spirits that are not here nor there. Yeah, they have the inclination to do evil, but still they have a chance of making the change. Yes, so these spirits are being reincarnating on earth, and that's why you see many of these crazy things we are seeing nowadays. These are the spirits that are having their last chance, and many of them unfortunately are missing the opportunity, and they'll go back to the spiritual world and they will go to a less evolved. But again, in terms of the population of the globe, it's the minority that is going to a less evolved primitive world. So Tanya, did I answer you? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead, because we're going to stop here anyway.
Yeah, it's time. So, for example, obsessors that are in the spiritual world, obsessing incarnate spirits, because there is a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Is the tendency for this relationship to continue, so they would be allowed to reincarnate on Earth, or they could be disengaged and not be incarnated here anymore and go to a lower?
It depends the reason of the obsession and the nature of the spirit, right? Because if it's a spirit that is, again, you have to remember that obsession is a two-way street, right? Both are connected because they want to be connected for reasons that they cannot. Yeah, there is a debt between both of them. So for them to, they can go, both of them can go to a, remember, this is a process that takes hundreds of years. So they can both be in the spiritual world and they both be taken to a more primitive world. Or if one of them is fighting to evolve, to learn, and the other is inclined to do evil, there can be a separation, and one spirit can go to a more less evolved world, and the other stay if they reach a point where they can be freed from the obsession. But it's again, it's a case by case, it's complex. You cannot give a general answer to that.
But in the case of the separation, the obsessor cannot obsess, like they're in different dimensions now, right?
They are even different dimensions, yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, once, because at this level of evolution, you don't move from one world to another voluntarily. You cannot. We cannot go from Earth to another planet at our level of evolution. We stay around here. This is our planet, right? For a while. For a while, until we, yeah, until we reach a level of evolution that we start being able to move around, right?
Only a few
more
people were able to go and to come and go back, like the ones like Moses, not Moses, Mozart,
the composer.
The composer. Jupiter. So he was able to come and go back. But he's very high.
Elevated spirit, yeah. He's saying that some spirits can, like Mozart, he's giving an example of Mozart, a spirit that was in Jupiter according to Kardec, according to the Spirit Review magazine, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. So this Saturday we have a lecture by Lígia Carvalho from our Spirit Center here in New Jersey. She's going to talk about reincarnation. She's a director of the U.S. Spiritist Federation on the youth education, and she's going to discuss the concept of reincarnation and its implication in our lives. Okay, so this is Saturday at 11 a.m. This Sunday is the third Sunday of the month, so we'll be studying the Medium's book, right? So that's what we move for the third Sunday of the month. And this coming Monday, it's a holiday, Juneteenth, so SGNY will be closed. Okay, we won't be coming here. So for those that come on Mondays here, we won't be having the meeting. Okay. And I'm going to, oh, the book club. Yes, Daniela, thank you. Let me see. The book club will discuss the last chapter of 2000 years ago this coming Wednesday. And then you're going to stop after that, or is?
Yeah, we are going to take a break and we are going to come back in mid-August.
Okay.
And then I'll give the exact date. So we are going to break for the summer.
All right. So this is the next Wednesday is the last discussion of the book 2000 years ago on the book club. Okay. Carol, can you do our final prayer? Thank you.
Sure.